And we're there. Welcome to the first ever Chess Pit Pod bonus material. We're coming from our various. I should probably mute that. Um, Various self-isolation booths around the country. My name's Phil Makepeace, and this time I am joined by John Mackenzie. Chris Russell is not with us today, unfortunately, but we're going to have a look at some of today's action from round 6 of the candidates, and then we'll see how we get on. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
And
I'm
have you
interested to see if my voice comes through this. It sounds quite loud.
been enjoying the candidates so far? What's been the experience for you?
I have really been enjoying it. It's been very entertaining, I think, mainly because I think everyone was wrong about what they thought it was going to be like, and it's been quite entertaining for me to enjoy that really. So I've been enjoying this sort of weird resurgence of Nepomniachtchi, the sort of fever-addled Jan Nepomniachtchi
The guy who
taking
doesn't know
everyone
his
on.
surname, yeah.
Yeah, that guy. Nepo, let's call him that.
Yeah, so he's well. I mean, there's 3 games still going on. He's the only game to have finished so far. Um, if the other games are all drawn, as it suggests they might be, he'll be he'll be a point clear of Vachier Lagrave. We're not even at the halfway stage yet. So his game against Ding, which pretty much you'd think puts Ding out of contention. I don't know. He's now on what 2 out of 6, -2. There's only there's only 8 games to go, and he's already 2.5 points behind Nepo. That's probably terminal. You think it would take something extraordinary.
Yeah, I think so. It's I mean, I've never really followed the candidates before, so I'm not entirely sure how it works out. So
Okay, so
I suspect that I don't know. I was looking at I'm not sure his name actually, but the guy whose name is on Twitter is why must I lose to this idiot?
that's Matt
I was
Fletcher. Yeah,
Matt Fletcher. Okay, I was looking at his predictions, and it does seem as though the original predictions going into this tournament have just been completely turned on their heads.
yeah. Karajan is still in there, of course, but he doesn't seem his dominant self, and it's the same story to what happened a couple of years ago, where he qualified um, after having had a. Actually, no, I'm completely wrong there. It's 4 years ago where he had a really good Viscount's A and then bombed in the candidates. I'm not saying he's bombed, but he's not. He's certainly not done as well as he might, shall we say? Um,
Is he well known for not performing well in crunch tournaments?
Caruana? No, not at all. I mean, the fact that he qualified 2 years ago and then drew with um, Carlsen effectively in the World Championship match suggests that absolutely no, that's not the case. But I don't know. He's just been a bit underwhelming so far. I think he had a good win against Alexienko, but not a whole lot else. Anyway, should we have a look at today's game between Nepo and Ding, which featured quite a few little tactical nuances that I'm going to do my best to explain to you. Have a
Yeah,
look.
let's do that.
Okay, so um, right, so we have whatever it is, a Spanish, and this is actually not too dissimilar to our failed aborted attempt at doing this kind of stream last week. A lot of the things are still relevant, where uh, we talked about the a7 square potentially being able to be used by black at some point for a bishop coming via c5 and hiding out there. Other feature of this line of the Spanish is that if black took this pawn here, they're completely opening up the e-file for a rook and even maybe a queen to come in. So this pawn is basically immune, where rook e1 either the knight falls back and there's going to be some kind of awkwardness on e5 after something like bishop takes c6, and then here maybe it's all just a bit filthy really. Um, so yeah, that pawn is immune. So bishop e7. I think this is actually very, very similar to the... I can't even remember who it was now that we tried to look at last week. Was it Ding
Ding.
versus MVL, possibly? Or... No,
Yeah, it was Ding.
was it... Who was it? Can't remember. Do you remember, John?
I think it was Ding MVL.
Ding MVL. Okay. So... Will you just tell me when to stop? Tell me when you've got some questions.
Yeah, I was just wondering. So with the pawn that you talked about being immune, I'm sorry, I'm going to be really slow here, but the pawn that you talked about being immune on e4, is it generally just protected by pushing the d pawn forward, or is there, because you obviously, as you said, it's immune, but at a certain point, it's not going to be immune anymore. So it has is White's job there just to protect it in a basic way, and then sort of just carry on with development?
Yeah, so the bishop to e7 helps to block the e-file, so that if White just played a move like, I don't know, there aren't many sensible moves here that don't protect the e-pawn actually. So let's say if White played h3 here, for example, and then Black took it. There's nowhere near as much sting now because Black can castle in one move out of any check. That's the idea.
Okay.
So your audio's a bit off, John. So I don't know.
What's wrong?
Getting a buzz. Okay. So all of this kind of stuff is pretty normal as well, where the bishop... White has the same opportunity to hide the bishop on a2. We've got this lovely long diagonal. And so rook takes a2 is certainly a fairly normal way of doing things. It's a slightly awkward looking piece though, isn't it? Because normally you'd have the rook coming in via one of these open files and try and come in this way. But not possible in this case. So knight c6, bishop g5, and here's a little interesting decision that Black's got to make here. Black's got to try and work out what to do really, because there's these little holes that they might be able to use for their pieces, and they've still got two knights. I don't know. It's all very solid, and basically whoever gets the first pawn break in, the first person to try and get rid of a pair of pawns is going to be doing quite well, I think, because then they can use those open files for their rooks. How do you see this position?
I wanted to go back to the bishop. So the bishop swap off on a2. Sorry, I'm being very slow.
No, it's okay.
So is the thinking behind this that White's light squared bishop is stronger than Black's?
Yeah, for now certainly, because the black bishop hasn't. I mean, in the Ding MVL game, the bishop, remember, came to b7 instead, and then just got stuck there because White got this massive bind on the d file after something like knight d5 and then takes, where the pawn... It was something like this, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where we had this kind of position where the this black bishop was just not a very fun piece. So I think this is a slightly better approach of trying to get rid of this light square bishop that is in theory causing some mayhem, and also it's just one of these things where this pawn is pinned, right? But it's not such a big deal for this pawn to be pinned at the moment. But at some point Black might want to play f5 to try to make things happen with it, for sure. So yeah, getting rid of those bishops isn't a bad idea, I don't think. But what it does mean is that you have this potential for a queen maybe to come to a1 with tempo, potentially. So that rook's actually perfectly placed on a2 at the moment. It looks a bit awkward, so it can't really do much. But if things start to open up with moves like a4 and c4, then the fact that white can play their queen to a1 and get a battery up the a file very quickly is potentially quite big.
When you say can move to a1 with tempo, is that assuming that the king was on h8 then, so you could get a check out of it?
No, tempo in this case is not that the queen is necessarily going to be doing anything at the moment. It's more that it can just go there in one move. You don't have to move this rook up immediately.
Right,
It's
okay.
already this is the tempo really that white has recaptured with the rook, and therefore
Yeah,
done
okay.
something at the same time as
You've
recapturing.
developed a piece as well as
Yeah,
capturing.
that's
Okay.
essentially it. Okay, so let's go back to. So this is the interesting decision where Queen D7 does the same kind of things that we've seen, but without the light squared bishops. Now this queen is actually a much better piece than in the game we looked at last week, than in the Ding MVL game, where this queen now has some nice light squares to look at, and it's not going to really be able to be attacked very easily because there's no light squared bishop for white, and also all the white knights would have to look at it from dark squares, which are all covered. So that's a positive, and it's a nice little square for that queen. And that kind of informs the next move by white. So here, as in most of these e4, e5 openings, white is going to get control of the d5 square. And the more control they can have on it, the less likely it is that black is going to be able to move that pawn up and gains a bit more space. So at the moment you've got 1, 2 versus 1. But there's a queen kind of eyeing it up as well. So getting rid of this knight is quite principled insofar as the knight can no longer look at d5 because it's no longer on the board. And also, if you count the number of minor pieces that can look at light squares, white has 2 and black only has 1. This bishop is useless at looking into the light squares, of course. So having the 2 knights against a knight and a bishop, or a knight and a bishop versus 2 bishops, does give you this thing where you are going to be able to overrun them on one particular colour. But as I'm sure you know, the issue with conceding a bishop is that if the position opens up a bit, if their pawns start disappearing off the board, that bishop might start to become quite good. So that's White's job here. White is going to try to keep as many pawns on the board as possible, and or just restrict this bishop in general. So that's why the knight came into d5.
So that's quite a nice space there now because it can't be attacked by any pawns unless the other knight moves off, right?
It can still be looked at by the knight. Moving the knight to e7, for example, at the moment is a problem because this is just not very fun.
Not very fun for black.
Yeah, because it is coming up here. Having said that, maybe it's okay because black played a5. I think the idea of a5 is to, as I said before, try and get the first pawn break in, try and start removing some pawns, so that the bishop and maybe even the black rooks might start to get some homes.
Yeah.
Doing things. I mean, visually, just does this look? Who would you rather be in this position?
I mean, like you say, that the knight on d5 is looking quite dangerous in that it's attacking the bishop, which is only being defended by a pawn, which will open up the defense on black side. And I'm guessing that pawn push by black is to sort of detract a little bit from a king side attack. Would that be fair to say?
Potentially, yeah. It's just this rook isn't really going to be able to be very much help on the king side for a long time yet.
Yeah, and the fact that knight has moved from defending it means that rook's a little bit precarious, right?
Yeah, if the a file opens, then white's going to have to do something about it for sure. And also, this knight's not really able to do anything over here. There's nothing really because the bishop's covering all of these squares.
Yeah.
So white isn't really going to be looking to play on the king side at all, I don't think. So I don't think
Would you be
taking the
tempted
bishop
to
makes
take?
sense.
Would you be tempted to take that bishop early on?
Well, not really, because then it gives black a... Maybe this is all alright for black, because I think... Okay, let's say I tried knight h4, because I don't really want you to play f5. But then I think you might just be able to play knight e7 and play it next move anyway.
Mm. Yeah, because I guess if you bring your queen across to d4 there, what you're gonna just gonna sit the king in front of it.
There's no real dynamism here.
Yeah.
Nothing's really happening.
This looks like the sort of attack that I do.
Black's just going to get f5 in and then they're fine, I think.
Yeah.
Because also what you have with this knight is that it really wants to be on f6, but it's going to take 4 moves to get there.
Right.
So it's just not really an option. So yeah.
So in that, sorry, I was going to go. It's all right.
This position.
Yeah, this position. Then, if the queen comes in here, you just defend with the knight on g6.
Queen comes in where, sorry?
d4. Sorry, I've moved it on mine, but maybe that doesn't show on yours.
It should be, but anyway. So
Queen on the diagonal up to g4.
Well, the queen will take it.
Oh yeah, of course. That's not a good move.
No,
yeah,
that would be sad.
That would be immediately losing, I suspect.
Yeah, at this level. Yeah. Okay, so if I've... Yeah, it's this knight is the key difference in the position, really, because these two knights are basically equivalent. But it's really the knight versus the bishop at the moment. With all these pawns on dark squares blocking the bishop, it's definitely a better position here for...
There's not much that the bishop can attack either, is there? Because
no.
there are a couple of pawns on dark squares over on the queen side, but in terms of the king side, it's not really going to be able to do much.
It's just this is all in the way. I mean, what you have here is this pawn chain from c7 to e5 that should shape the direction of play, in theory. So black should really be playing on the king side. Ding did this the other day, actually. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was Caruana yesterday. Caruana played against the pawn chain, effectively. And yeah, he just decided to play some nuts move against whoever he was playing. Where he just played on the completely opposite side to where the pawn chain suggested, and he got into a bit of trouble. So the principle is good. The principle is good, John. To play in the direction. So black really wants to get this move f5 in. But it's not going to be so easy. Because white has got a decent amount of light square control at the moment.
Yeah. I always struggle with this the notion of like who's controlling where. In terms of, I don't look at a position and think immediately, oh well, clearly white's controlling the dark squares here. But
well, its color complexes is definitely one of the harder things to understand. Generally, for colors, you want to be going by where the pawns are, and if they've got a bishop, what color the bishop is. So if white had a light squared bishop here as well, they'd be doing very, very well because they've got enormous light square control. Oops, owing to these things. Black just has more dark square control because they've got more pawns on dark squares, and they've got a dark squared bishop.
Yeah.
In terms of the action area, well, because all these pawns on C through H are symmetrical, there's no real massive space advantage for either player, apart from maybe on the queen side where black has slightly more space, owing to this having a slightly more advanced pawn.
So will a professional chess player just have a general sense of where everything's at all the time?
Yeah, I think so. You kind of want to know what the prevailing wind is.
Yeah.
Definitely. Should we get to the key moment, because it's really fun? So I'll just gradually get through here. So the exchange on the a file. Now black has very decent control of the
So
a file.
did
But
White lose tempo then, having to move that rook then? So it ended up being a negative tempo further up the notation.
well, not at the moment, because I think actually white's got aims of getting this pawn up the board. Because white has this very easy pawn break with c4, which pretty much forces that pawn off,
Right.
and then this b pawn is going to start doing things. So I think white's better here simply because black's structure is a bit fragmented. This pawn is loose. This bishop can't really come over and help, and this knight just looks at everything.
So it was a bad move then by Ding to start pushing the pawn or get the pawn break in early?
No, I think it's still about equal. But the point is that I think white has the easier time of it, at the very least psychologically.
Okay.
Where white's plan is just a bit easier.
Yeah.
So bishop d8, and then yeah, this c4 idea of just trying to gain a bit more space on the queen side and maybe even start pushing that b pawn. Because this pawn on c7 is a bit of a sitting duck. It can't move. It's not. I don't think it's feeling very happy with life necessarily at the moment. And now, yeah, the black pawn's just even more fragmented. But at least now that this pawn can come to f5 at some point, maybe white's going to do their best to stop that happening. So all of this here, really, this next bit is just a transfer of all of their resources from Nepo to play on the queen side, while black doesn't do an enormous amount. And so now we've got this pass b pawn. I wasn't entirely thrilled with the last few moves from black, but again, as I said, it's just very hard to find a plan when there's nothing completely clear cut to do. So what we have now, this b pawn can go as far as it wants, really. The fact that the rook's already on the second rank means that this rook can come up and start doing the same thing. And black's got this very good central bind where all these squares are. That was silly. Hold on, let's try again. All these squares are under their control, but if white can get this pawn up the board quickly, then they're going to be laughing. So, queen king.
Is that simply because it just forces the game into White's hands in the sense that Black has to respond to a pawn march?
Yeah, and black is going to try and take as much space on the king side as possible while they have the opportunity. So this is what happens here. So after queen b3, Ding they just have this thing where these pawns just on either side of the board keep marching. So h3 is an important move because that restricts the king. So if the white rooks get a bit too frisky, there might be some back rank things happening where the king doesn't have any escape squares. The king doesn't have any luft.
So if he had taken on g3 instead of moving to h3, which way would the knight have just come across here, or?
I think the main principle with removing with recapturing pawns is that you do it towards the centre.
Okay.
You also don't want to be opening up too many lines. So if you take with the h pawn, the only line that you've opened up is the h file, and nothing's going to be happening. I mean, black can play queen to h3, but it's going to take a little while for a rook to start appearing. So that's one way. Also, yeah, this diagonal isn't really a thing. If you take with the
especially with the dark squared bishop, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you take with the f pawn, I think you're getting yourself into a bit of trouble. After bishop's coming into the e3, and then the queen's coming in. I'm not so sure though.
I guess if you attack with the bishop there, then you can bring the queen down into h3 and attack the rook, which is then undefended.
So this does look slightly awkward. So queen h3, b7, rook b8. I think white's probably too quick to get anything going before you get a chance to play rook e6 to h6, which would threaten mate on both h2 and h1. I imagine white's too quick here to make things happen.
Yeah.
Because there's going to just get an extra queen.
Your queen's just going to take on d5,
But
right?
it's a
And then
consideration. Yeah, well, actually, that's the other way. Yeah, of course. This queen can actually just come into d5 immediately and then defend via d2. That's the other way. Yeah.
you're forcing all kinds of takes there as well.
Yeah, this isn't going to be very happy. So yeah, generally you want to be taken towards the center because it's just where the action is going to be. But in this case, you also want to be opening as few lines as possible. And lines
Yeah.
in this case can mean files, it can mean ranks, it can also mean diagonals.
Yeah.
So h3 here, yeah, black is going to be trying to get some counterplay by, I mean, there's a very simple 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, mate. So these things are, it's what white has to be careful of. And King H1, the commentators on Chess24, today we had Nihal Sarin and Nils Grandelius, who were very, very cogent actually, very, very good-humoured, and they were impressed with King H1, where it just solved a lot of these problems forever because this knight is now going to come to G1 and defend F2, F3 that way. And it's very hard because of the positioning of these pawns, it's very hard for black to ever get a queen into E4 because there's just no way of clearing these out of the way.
Yeah.
So that was a nice.
So once again, the pawns are clogging up potential attacks.
Yeah. So the fact that white has this extra pass pawn basically means they have the tie breaks, as I like to call them, where if all the pieces started hoovering off the board, then white would just be able to push that pawn and win. So black has to use the pieces they've got effectively. So black, we had a bit of a fight for the b file and then bishop d8. Queen b5. Black does not want to exchange queens because that would go against what I just said about white having the tie breaks, and also black, we said, needs to try and make things happen over here. So queen g4, queen takes d5, and then we get to eventually to this position where there's an extraordinary resource here for Ding that some of the computers picked up, but Nepo afterwards wasn't. I don't think he was that surprised that there was a resource here, but he was also quite calm about having not played like the perfect game because this existed, because it's just that crazy and it's that unusual that I think he was, yeah, very, very much okay with the idea that this position he might have gone wrong here slightly and allowed a draw. Because black has this ridiculous resource, rook takes b6. Okay, so let's just go back to the base position and try and work out why this might exist and what the kind of thing that black is looking for. Okay, so the only way that white isn't getting mated here with queen f3 and then queen g2 is that this bit queen needs to stay on this diagonal. Because if it doesn't stay on the diagonal, then it can't look at the f3 square. So it's partly motivated by trying to shift the queen out of the way.
So you're giving up basically a bishop. Well, yeah, a bishop.
It will actually eventually be a whole rook.
Oh, right.
You're also trying to clear this rook out of the way so that you can scoot this rook down and do some groovy mates that way.
Yeah, because obviously the king can't do anything with that pawn there.
So the idea here is that you want, if you've got any attack, it doesn't matter if it's this position, another position, anything. It's just a numbers game, right? The value of the pieces does, you know, you're not going to do very well with 2 pawns against a queen. That's not going to be a 2-on-1 scenario normally. But certainly if you've got, say, a queen and a rook against not a lot, while all the white pieces are somewhere else, that's going to be a very valid way to play. That could be a very valid 2 versus 1, 2 versus nothing maybe. So the idea here is after rook takes b6, rook takes rook, queen takes knight. So you've given away the exchange here, and this rook is being attacked. rook to b8, and there's this ridiculous move, rook e5. The idea being that you're threatening mate this way. So rook queen e1, rook takes e1, rook takes e1 is the threat. So you got two. This is basically your 2-on-1. 1, 2 versus 1. And white simply does not have time to come doing anything else. So something like rook takes d8, check, king h7.
Couldn't the queen drop onto the first rank?
So let's have a look at that. So in this case, so queen c1, I believe, is met by queen takes f2.
And then
you've
you're
still
gonna
got the same threat.
you're gonna drop the rook down and sacrifice that instead.
Well, possibly. There's just no move here, really.
Oh yeah, because you can just mate on the next go, right?
Because if queen g1 to try and cover things, is this correct? This may not be correct. Have I got this wrong? Is queen c1, is it queen takes f2 or is it something else?
If you then drop the...
Oh no, you just got mate here, sorry. Of course you do. Sorry. There's your mate. That's your first one.
So that's forced mate.
That's forced one. Queen can't come to defend the back rank. And if you play... I think it's rook g1 is... No, that can't be... yeah, rook g1 looks more sensible. Then you're going to have problems with queen takes f2, and then this rook is going to come down to e2 and start threatening mate on h2 instead.
Yeah, and so you can't do anything. Yeah.
So
I mean, even if you drop the rook down to the first rank again, there's nothing that.
But
there's
the
nothing.
point is the rook's completely out of play. This rook is completely out of play now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're threatening rook e2 and rook e1.
Yeah.
This is it. Yeah, where
it just starts looking very horrible.
Yeah. So this was the resource, but I'm.
Presumably that's just like mad calculation for this point in a game for a player who's struggling in the tournament.
It's the kind of thing I've seen Ding do. I've seen him find these things. There was in the World Rapid against Carlsen. I think it was the World Rapid. It was one of the big Rapid events. Actually, no, it was possibly the one in St. Louis, maybe part of the Grand Chess Tour, where he just found this ridiculous 6 or 7 move deep line against Carlsen to beat him. But this is... I suppose you might be correct insofar as he was maybe looking for the kind of game he got, actually, in the end. So let's just wind it forward to this kind of ending, where this is, in theory, if this pawn didn't exist, so this was the final position actually, because this pawn is going to drop off white. Black can't take the d pawn and then defend the h pawn at the same time. So white is going to be able to win this pawn, and then it's not dissimilar to yesterday's game between where Wang Hao against Nepo, where Wang Hao in theory resigned in this drawn position. I'm not so sure it was that drawn. But yeah, this is more of a sort of despair resign, where you're just going to get ground down eventually. After something like rook takes d3, I don't know, knight takes h3, because you can't then play rook takes f3 because you've got this fork, which is nasty. So
knight forks are awful. I'm
yes,
terrible at knight forks.
You can use your king to come try and get these pawns, but there's going to be some way, and Ding just didn't need to be shown it. I think that's the way they tend to say it. It's, you're not in a game of chess, you're not really resigning because it's, you don't want to play anymore. You just don't need to be shown the way to win by your opponent at this level. Yeah. But this is the kind of position he was looking for with the way he played, where in theory, because none of these pieces can move, it's quite difficult for white to do anything. But unfortunately, he does have this move f3, which just disconnects the third rank, and it blocks the way.
Right. Okay.
I mean, even if I'm just going to triangulate here for a second. So let's say,
what if he moves his king here?
I'm just going to triangulate. So if we had it on h6 initially, something like this, whatever, where you could take f3. If you were able to take this pawn, you'd have absolutely loads of chances because white's only got these h pawns. I've got an extra piece, of course, but these two passed pawns might have a thing. The fact that the Ding actually saw all of this, so this sort of forced line here, actually shows that he's calculating pretty well. He just didn't find f3 on move, where he has to see it's on move 33, right? So he's seen 7 moves, but he just couldn't see the 8th. And that's often the difference that I find in playing very strong players. I remember a game I played in the Middlesex League last year against Vakidov, who I think is about 25-90. He's the Uzbekistan number 2, maybe. Yeah, playing in the Middlesex League, I know. But there was this big complicated line, and he'd just seen one move further. And I think that's the difference between any strata of difference in chess ability, that you're going to see this thing where one player will just calculate one move further, and that's how they win. And you'll find it as well with beating
with people who can calculate 3 moves rather than 2 moves ahead, like me.
Something like that, yeah. So what's actually happened in the other games so far? Because when we came on air, it was only this one at the finish. Of the others,
I have no idea. I'll have a look.
Wang Vacher-Lagrave has been drawn. That was a good save. That was a very good hold by MVL, and that means he stays a point behind Nepo. So there's still a contest going on.
He was about a pawn behind at one point, wasn't he?
Well, I think he finished the game a pawn behind. It was just that his knight got very good. Grischuk Caruana has also been drawn. That's given. This is the massive frustration with Grischuk, right? Insofar as he's taking 50 minutes, an hour and 5 minutes over some moves, and he's just clearly very. I mean, he does this anyway, but he's also clearly very rattled. Yesterday, he said that in an interview that the tournament really should be cancelled. But he's drawn all his games so far, and he's playing very, very solidly, and he's having no problems as such. It's a massive frustration. Alexeyenko Giri looks.
Your boy Giri's come back from the dead, seemingly there. Well, not from the dead, but it'd be good for him to take himself off the bottom of the table so far.
Yeah, he should be winning this. Queens and knights work very well together. Anyway, that was good. Did you learn?
Good fun, yeah. I learned a huge amount, which is why I've been quite quiet today, because there's so much like basic theory that I just don't know. Like even just ideas like always move the pawn towards the centre seems like a very basic idea, but one that I'm not particularly well rehearsed in. But issues with, I always find the bishop stuff tough, knowing which when to swap a bishop or not. I'm just not very good at analysing positions, I think, and assessing which piece is going to be more important for me in terms of swapping off pieces. So, yeah, very, very interesting. And these games have been really, really open. I've been surprised how many games have been won in this tournament. Just because I think my first experience of tournament play was the Caruana Carlsen World Championship, where everything was drawn, and I just sort of got into my head that that's just what chess was these days. Just a huge amount of drawn games. So yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to record episode 9 at some point soon, are we not? And then
we are.
We're going to have some more nonsense. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed to the podcast, then you may find the Chess Pit on all good aggregators: Apple, Spotify, Google. Tell your granny, tell your dog. We want to get as many of you getting involved as possible. So, shall we end it there? Why not?
Let's end.
Okay. Cheers, guys.